Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at the first submission by Diane of her horse Jazz. Jazz is a 15-year-old Connemara who was started as a young horse, about 2.5, she said, and then the horse stood for about 10 years before she started trying to work it again. So we definitely have to take that in consideration. She said she had a trainer who told her to just lunge for 3 months before she started riding, and that is exactly what I would suggest as well. Because really we want to get a horse over its back and into the stretch before we bother to ride. Because when we get on a horse that is not over its back on the flat, if it can't hold itself up in the right position, how's it going to hold you and itself up in the right position? It doesn't have enough strength. So we really want to get the horse stretching before we think about doing much riding. Now we will take a little bit of a look at some riding here later on in this tape. And my suggestion will be pretty much the same thing. Go back to just the lunging. Now this horse looks pretty good for having stood around for as many years as it did, and that's not got a big sway back or a big hanging belly, so that's good. You've gotten the horse in pretty good shape here at the moment, but this horse never really quite gets there over its back throughout this tape. So we've got to get the stretching much more actively and a little deeper. So the first thing I'm going to suggest, what I see here, is that the horse has always got its shoulders pulled way outside the circle of its hindquarters. So if you watch yourself going around there, you see the other horse is counterflexing to the outside. So it's evading the gymnastic quality of the exercise because it's not bringing its inside hind leg under the body and pushing up to the back, which is what helps us to get the stretch. So what you need to do is get a little closer to the horse and ask the horse to move away from the contact with the whip. That is, run the lash out and touch it in that fleshy part there above the buttocks, and teach the horse to move more actively away from you. You might want to take a moment and take a look at our videos on work in hand on the site at Art to Ride, and try a little bit of that. Very often when I have horses that are as stiff as this one appears to be and have been hollow for a long, long time, if I work them in hand, I can get them stretching a little more actively before I go to the lunge line, or at least I can teach them to move the hindquarters away from the touch of the whip, which is what we need to have happen here before this horse is ever going to start stretching much. So that's what I want you to do, is start bringing the horse in closer to you, even at a walk here, and you can walk along with the horse as you do later on in the tape. But you want to work close enough to the horse at this stage that you can touch the horse with the whip when you want to. So see him coming around this corner here, how the shoulders are pulled way outside the line of the hindquarters. In other words, the two ends of the horse are going on two different circles. So right off the bat here, the biggest thing we have to achieve is getting this horse to move away from the whip, to swing its hindquarters out away so that we can actually get both ends on the horse on the same circle, and the horse can begin to reach a little deeper under the body and push up with the inside hind leg. So the trot we have here is really more of a jog. It's not really a trot. It's just kind of a jogging trot, if you want to call it that, but not enough to, it's kind of flat-footed. There's no flexion in the hocks. The horse is just kind of moving along shuffle-footed, so to speak. So we've got to get this horse much more active to start with. So thinking about just that in the beginning, just get this horse more actively forward. Want to keep it slack out of the line. But again, see how the horse is pulling the shoulders outside the line, how the hindquarters are way inside. So what I'd like to see you do is just bring that line a lot shorter and walk with the horse and get close enough to the horse that you can begin to have a better effect on the back end of the horse. Now this horse stood around for many, many years, it sounds like, which if it wasn't doing anything too damaging, which it doesn't look like, it's not sway back. This horse's belly is pulled up pretty nicely. I'm not sure exactly how long you've been working this horse in one way or another. It's not working over its back, but it doesn't look terribly sunken the way many of them are that we see. So something's beginning to go right here, or has gone right enough to keep that from happening. But now we need to go to the next stage of just getting this horse to stretch more completely. There just really isn't much use in riding a horse that's not over its back, because of course if the horse can't lift its back without you on there, how's it going to do it with you on there? So we need to get that really established before we really worry about any kind of riding. I personally would never get on a horse that isn't over its back. It's just a waste of time. It's not going to get better because I'm going to put, my 175-pound body on his back. It's going to be actually more difficult for the horse. You can see how kind of stumbling the canter is here. The horse really can't engage in the canter. So I wouldn't do too much of that with this horse at this stage. You can see how the horse is just kind of rocking back and forth off of its front end to its back end. That's what we call that rocking horse canter that some people think is how a horse is supposed to feel. It should not at all. A horse that's correctly cantering comes up underneath you and stabilizes. It does not rock forward and down like you're on a teeter-totter. would be the same thing. So imagine if you're playing polo, and I've trained a lot of polo horses as well in my life. Imagine trying to hit a ball off of a horse that's going like that. You can't. When you watch really good polo players, for instance, who know the same things that we know, the thing to take home is that all good riders are doing the same thing. And I see good Western riders, I see good jumper riders, I see good dressage riders, but just not many of them, unfortunately. And they're usually people who like myself, just go along quietly doing their own thing because they don't want to either rock the boat or deal with the consequences of disagreeing with these so-called dressage societies today. But if you look at people at the highest level, if you watch some of these great Argentinian polo players I'm talking about, you'll see how they hardly ever touch the reins, and the horses stay well over their backs. In fact, I was taught to do flying changes by a man who actually was General de Carpentry's second in command before World War II at our last cavalry depot, and actually helped him write his book. And from working with him, he was probably the one who actually wrote the book, because he was an incredible trainer. He was a 9-goal polo player who rode his horses just in a snaffle with no standing martingale, never touched the reins. And once again, that's the point of getting the horse over the back, so you can hit a ball off of a platform that's not moving. If the horse is moving the way you see there, is like, I use this example of polo because you can clearly see it. Most of the American polo players, they come up, they jerk on the reins, the horses stop against their front legs, and they don't keep moving forward. And that's really what keeps them from becoming good polo players. And once again, you must be a good horseman before you're going to be a good polo player. If you don't know how to ride a horse and you're just on a horse, using it as a contrivance to go from one place to another, not paying attention to how it's moving, you're not going to be able to do anything too athletic on it and really be very successful. So this is a little more active, and that's better, but we can clearly see how ewe-necked the horse is here. Basically just kind of pulling itself along with its shoulders is what's happening here. You can see there's very little flexion in the hock, and as the horse goes around the circle, you can see how the hind legs are just falling out behind the body, almost like the horse is collapsing in its middle. So this is what we have to solve before we get to too much riding work. Now you can begin to take the shambone, well, you wouldn't want it much tighter than it is there. I think the big thing is that you get this horse moving its hindquarters away from you, and then I think you'll see a better stretch out of the horse. Now this isn't bad. Now this is looking better. At least the walk looks better here. So just know that that's where it starts. We start everything in the walk, and that's where so many people make the mistake, is that they don't know how to ride the walk, so they think that it isn't doing much, so they jump right to the trot and canter. But as Nuno Oliveira used to say, the walk is where we explain everything to the horse. So if you haven't explained it in the walk, so to speak, that has gotten him over its back, it's only going to be that much harder going into the trot, and even more so in the canter. Now, it's not to say once in a while I see a horse that canters better than it trots. Usually those are big, heavy horses. Usually some of these big draft crosses and things like that are the kind of horses I see that in, that really weren't, bred for trotting. Remember, the heavier draft breeds really were designed to pull something at a slow rate, like a plow or something, or a wagon or something, but they weren't used for speed. So we always have to take into consideration the shape of the horse itself, its weight, size, all of these things matter. But coming back to this walk and the stretch is just the good thing to do. Now, I'd like to have seen you do more of that. So the best work that we saw there was the very last steps of that walk. So I'd like to see you do more of that and begin to get the horse stretching. So if you can't get the good trot yet, just come back to the walk like you were there. I'd like to see more of that until you get the horse to stretch more deeply into the contact. Try that, and we'll see if that doesn't improve. Now, I would highly recommend that you don't get on this horse again until you get this horse stretching, because the work here in the under saddle just at this point is just not going to be that helpful for the horse. And as you said, you're encountering resistance when you try to contact the reins and this sort of thing. That's simply because the horse is not strong enough yet to be able to carry you. So if you are going to ride the horse at this stage, what you want to do is just forget about the reins and just let them go long and loose as much as you can, and just get the horse activated. Like this walk that we're seeing here is not fast enough. It's not swinging actively enough to really get anything to happen. And it looks like you're trying to work with your reins there a little bit. And that would be a mistake at a horse at this level, because, as you said, you're encountering that resistance because the horse literally can't do what you're asking it to do at this point. Once again, if it can't stretch without you on its back, it's only going to be more difficult when you get up there. Now, the one thing I'd say about your position here, it looks pretty good. I'd just like to see you bring your shoulders back a little bit and not round them forward, because remember, only just doing that, just rounding your shoulders forward changes your balance on the back of the horse. So I'd like to see you just straighten up a little bit more And then if you're going to ride the horse, just concentrate on getting the walk more active. Like this is just too slow to be of any real value to the horse. All that's really happening here is the horse just kind of collapsing out from underneath you, and it's going so slow, there's no impulsion. So this would not be something that you'd want to spend much time doing. If you want to try the walk, then just let go of the reins and just concentrate on making the step active. Another thing you might want to do is just leading the horse in hand as a preliminary to that work in hand. If you try that, and just have a whip in your outside hand, so your rein, you're walking alongside the horse's shoulder, you've got a dressage whip in your left hand, and you can reach behind the horse and send it forward actively and really make it walk out actively. That's another thing you can do. But we can see how these hind legs are just really stuck in the mud here. So this kind of walk work is really not going to help you in any way, and probably it's going to lengthen the time that you spend trying to get this horse working correctly. So I really recommend that you go back to just that trot work, the lunge work, until you get that really happening well, and then get back on, and then I think you're going to feel some amazing things. Now, in your letter, she said that she had felt the horse's back come up a little bit, and that's fantastic. So that means you're on the right track and that you're beginning to become aware of that. But what I'm seeing here in this work is this is just not, the horse isn't developed enough for this really to do the horse much good. And this is such a slow walk that all that really could happen here is the horse kind of collapse out from underneath you, which is basically what happens. And of course, you would never want to sit to the trot as you're doing here. With a horse that's hollow in the back and can't get up over its back, you would never want to sit to the trot. You want to rise to the trot and get the horse moving actively. So that's way too much sitting trot. You can see how the back end is just falling out behind it. So forget the sitting trot entirely, even if you do ride the horse before you get it to lunge correctly. But you would never want to sit to the trot on a horse that's back is not up. That's only going to do untold damage to the horse. So we can clearly see here the horse is really rather struggling to keep your weight, to carry you, that is. The hind legs are just kind of trotting along, kind of falling out behind as you trot. So there's really not enough here, in my way of thinking, to work this horse from a mounted position yet. Now watch what happens on this turn here. See, that was way too sharp a turn. The horse completely lost the rhythm. The hind legs fell out behind it. And now you're back to trying to sit again, which is not what you'd want to ever do. Even in a downwards transition, just rise to the trot on a horse at this level until you can get the horse to come back, and just slowly bring the horse back to a walk. So for me, this horse is just really not ready to be ridden yet. I think that what you're doing here is actually probably doing more harm than good, just in the sense that, I don't mean that you're abusing the horse in any way, but I just don't think you're going to get what you want with a horse as undeveloped as this. So going back to the lunge line work until you get the horse to really stretch, as I say, which we saw in the very end there before you cut off the tape, the horse was starting to walk a little better, and that's what I want to see. There's never any point in going up into a trot. If the horse is as hollow and slow as this one in the walk, it's not going to get better because you go up into a trot. You may think you're doing more because the horse is in a different gait, but it really, from what I see here, the horse is just falling out behind, and there's nothing really happening that is going to be worthwhile for the horse in the long run. Yes, you're having a ride, just like everybody else that rides their horses upside down, but the end result is what we're looking for, and this is just not going to help you get the horse there as quickly as you would like to do. Now the horse is kind of softening for you here nicely. I mean, that's not too bad. Better than the trot work was certainly, but certainly not stretching enough yet to really do much riding work. You see your own position there, and that's not bad. I just like to see you flatten your shoulder blades into your back and stretch up. Because remember, when a horse has dropped his back, we have to keep ourselves light in the saddle. We have to keep stretching up away from the back so that our weight isn't hindering the horse. But you're off to a good start here, and I commend you for trying to bring this 15-year-old horse back. You will be able to do so. I don't see anything wrong with the horse. But once again, I think it will be a lot faster process if you stick to the lunging until you get this horse moving correctly. Because all this trot work here and walk work just really hasn't been anything that's going to be of any value for the horse. You can see how short the stride is. The horse's kind of hind legs are falling out behind. So that just simply tells me the horse is not far enough along to do this. And you'll get much more by doing the lunging work and getting that corrected and then going on to this. But very good job. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. You're on the right track. You just need to make a few adjustments in your thinking, and I think this is going to be a wonderful horse when you get there. Will Faerber from Art to Ride. We'll see you next time.